Yeah, but why are you bothering me with all these like spam messages? Like, I don't care about this stuff.
You could just block me.
Do I have to in order to stop the
Nah,
messages? Okay.
but to be fair, I'm spreading honest messages around Discord.
Oh boy. Is this a campaign?
It is a campaign.
Oh, wow.
What's the motivation?
Honesty.
Honesty. And well, I mean, you could be honest about any number of things, right? Why this?
It's an account. Look at my bio. It says honest Angstreich fan. I'm an honest Angstreich fan.
Look, if you're gonna meme, I'm just gonna kick you out of here. I'm not really. Look, I'm not into. I wasn't into the messages. If you're gonna come in here and not just gonna meme answer, then I just like seriously, I don't really have the time for it. And I don't want to have spend the time on it. Are you like just mad about some kind of like debate ratings thing, and now you're making a like lobbying basically or something? I don't know. What is
I
this?
don't know why
What's
you
the,
always psychoanalyze it that way. How am I mad? Do I sound mad?
not at this present moment, no. But I asked what the motivation was, and you didn't really answer.
I said the motivation was to be honest and expose the sophistry.
Oh, okay, that's a little more clear. Expose the sophistry.
So, you saying Jack
Okay.
is a sophist?
He does use sophist tactics.
Hmm.
Because
When did this happen? Because claims that are that strong usually don't happen
sometimes he
like.
usually, when he understands a position that's intelligible, but he doesn't have an objection up his sleeve, what he would do is he would just say that he doesn't know what his interlocutor means by certain terms, which is just
That seems
which is
honest
just
to say.
conceptual impoverishment.
Yeah, but that's not. Sophistry is the employment of fallacious reasoning. What you're describing is not even any kind of reasoning.
I didn't actually use sophistry in the same sense that you were using it.
Okay, so I just presumed when you said he was a sophist, and then you followed up with that, you were giving an example of his sophistry.
Yeah, but it's not just limited to just any form of fallacious reasoning. Although he does actually he has actually engaged in fallacious reasoning before. He was just said that he's not bothered by engaging in fallacious reasoning.
Okay.
But my sense of sophistry isn't just limited to fallacious reasoning, although fallacious reasoning could be like a necessary condition. It's certainly not a sufficient one. I also take the
So you're just
whole
gonna use sophistry to describe like sort of like dishonesty in debate or just something like that.
yeah, it's some level of dishonesty, I would say.
When did this happen that like you're at odds with the Aang gang? When did this happen? Has it been building up or something?
Building up. It was already here from the ground. I don't know what you were saying. Like it was like a build up or something. Was
Well, I
I
wasn't
was I
aware of it. That's
ever an
why it
affiliate?
I thought,
seemed like it.
yeah. I mean, there was a time when, like, there were perhaps, I don't know, 8 of you, and you would do rooms together all the time. And it would be like you, Jack, I don't know, Dog, Venus,
On
I like uh, I
JK.
like I like all those people. I'm just saying that I'm here to expose some of the tricks that they employ that you guys don't call out, but I do.
Mm-hmm.
for it.
Is this some kind of unfairness thing? Because people call out some of your tricks, and you feel like others should be called out
Well,
as well?
clearly something happened because you weren't doing this the whole time. So you must have seen, like, perhaps a few debates that, like, turned you off.
I've What do you mean? I've been doing this since May. You're
Yeah, but
like the whole going around saying that I'm an honest account and that stuff. Is that what you're referring to?
No. No, I just, well, okay, so what happened between April and May? Like, I feel like there must have been some catalyst for this new, campaign of exposing his dishonesty.
Yeah, I'm just saying that he has tactics which I think you guys tend to overlook against theists, but was on full display this morning.
Oh, this
You can
morning?
miss them if you don't have a keen eye. Then you
Oh
can miss
yeah,
them.
oh yeah.
You know.
What happened this morning? Who's he talking to?
E.
Oh.
Yeah, he was talking to
Okay.
E.
I just don't
I
know
think
what
I
it
was
would
there for that.
mean.
Yeah, I mean, Jack's discussions in here with theists aren't usually like very like deep. I mean, it's usually just like him listening for a while and then weighing in on some dumb shit that like Matt Adams said or John Lee said. So I don't get it.
There's certain.
He said Jack was dishonest. He said that Jack uses tactics in debates that smart people can pick up on, like him, and he's going to continue to. He has exposed Jack for it, and he's going to continue to expose Jack as a sophist. That's what he said.
And he said,
Wait, can I get just a confirmation from anybody else who was here?
yes, and then he said that he's had this attitude.
Yeah, that's what he said.
This isn't something new, is what he said.
Yeah, and he says he's been doing this for 3 months.
Right.
So I thought it was weird because I'm kind of like just as surprised as Jack. I'm like, what are you talking about, right? I didn't understand that there was like some kind of tension between the two.
It's just a healthy disagreement.
It sounds more like a move.
Yeah, I received many messages from him. I got a whole screen of messages here. What are your responses to me destroying the Aang gang? I have no idea what you're talking about. He spams him versus Jack, him versus Danny, and then another one with him versus Jack. You say, am I supposed to care about this or something? He says, I think you should, since you constantly rate them. And I said, rate them? You think these people are great debaters. I said, yes, of course. And he says, they didn't look great here against yours truly. And then he came in and said all the other stuff that he said, that Jack was a sophist, that Jack was dishonest. He has exposed Jack, and he's going to continue to expose Jack.
Well,
So there seems to be some misunderstanding. Were you trolling with all that stuff earlier about Jack and his solipsism, or no?
Sophistry.
Sorry.
Solipsism?
Sorry.
Sophistry.
I agree. Jack is very solipsistic.
Yes, no? That's all
I
we wanted to know.
mean, yeah, some of it I would say, like the way I presented it, that I came in here saying, "Oh, I'm an honest Angstreich fan. You know, I'm calling out my idol." Yeah, that like the framing of it was a bit trollish, but I felt like the point about him not him sometimes like admitting that he's engaging in fallacious reasoning, but him being like nonchalant about it did come off as like sophistic.
Admitting that I engage in fallacious reasoning? What are you talking about?
Remember in our discussion where I laid out an objection against your view that naturalists have, and I explained that if you were to present an argument like this, let's just take a rule following argument, or like any a priori argument that you want, and I said, well, if let's suppose that the conclusion of your argument states something like, therefore mental states are not analytically identical to physical states, something like that. Well, a type A physicalist can always do like some sort of Morian shift and say, well, the conclusion of your argument is going to contradict with what I believe anyway. So it appears like one of the premises within your argument, its plausibility is going to be parasitic on the plausibility of the conclusion. So if I have no reason to accept your premise, right, and its plausibility assumes that the conclusion is true, you would just be begging the question against the naturalist, and you said, sure, but I don't see why I should care about that.
No, that wasn't. I can't believe you don't. We've been over this so many times. I can't believe you still don't understand this, right? All I was
I
saying
think
here.
you do believe I understand it.
No, obviously you don't, right? Because the point was
Why do
simply to
you
say
presume
that
I
if
don't
somebody
understand
says,
it?
the point is simply to say that if somebody says that's not my concept, right? That's not going to be of any interest to me,
It's not just
right?
that.
Like if I say,
Sorry,
I just don't get
continue.
it. I mean, like that was explained numerous times.
It's not.
It's just so
It's not
tiresome.
just. Sorry, let me move to a different spot. It's not just that they have a different concept than you. It's also the fact that if you were to present an argument as such, where even if you have a completely different concept than the naturalist, the analytic naturalist in that instance can always just presume that the conclusion of your argument is false, or there's something fallacious within the argument, because any set of reasons that you've provided in order to establish your conclusion, the premises of which that you employ within the argument is going to assume that the conclusion is true. So it's a fallacious argument anyway.
No, the point is simply that somebody can more shift against an argument, right? And if they do that, right, then it's of no interest to me, right, that they do that.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's
I
not
was
fallacious.
more trying to get to the point that, and I think that you weren't interpreting what I was saying correctly. I was more getting to the point that if you have the goal in presenting a successful, convincing argument against an analytic naturalist that shows that there isn't an analytic identity between mental states and physical states, you presenting these kinds of conceptual arguments, which I think anyway are going to be question begging under the account of question begging I just provided to you. Any reasonable type A physicalist wouldn't accept any of the premises anyways.
Yeah, but I didn't disagree with that.
Okay, so what you're admitting to me is that because you got to remember the context in which we were talking about
Look,
that
there's
discussion.
no point. I'm just
Wait,
saying,
I wasn't done. I
yeah, I
wasn't done.
understand. I don't want you to waste my time, right? I'm just going to
I'm
say it
not
clear.
wasting your
I'm
time. I'm
just
just
going to
telling you
say it.
what
I'm
happened.
just going to say it clearly once what my view is, right? If somebody claims to be an analytic naturalist, right, just says, well, it's not an open question for me that there's this identity. I'm sorry, that this identity doesn't, that this identity holds. It's not an open question for me that this identity holds. There's nothing more to say, right? That's it.
Well,
That's not engaging
well,
in fallacious reasoning. That's saying, look, it's of no interest to me, right, that you think there's an analytic identity, because the concept that I'm employing is one in which there's an open question about whether the two are identical, right? And so
that's
you
just
saying to
wait,
me,
but that's just presuming that then they're just presuming that there's something within their concept, right? That even if you don't share that same concept with them, that would still establish that within your argument there's something that, in which case, because you didn't provide an objection when I said I understand your point by saying that there's no further interest in you engaging in that person if there's just going to be a conceptual dispute. But what you didn't answer is what I said when we were discussing the Putnam's arguments, right? And I wanted to ask you a question as to whether or not it would be logically possible for there to be a world where the evaluative facts are different, but nevertheless the physical facts remain the same, something like that. And I gave you the example of value naturalism and how they could reply to that. And then I told you that if I were to interpret the argument in such a way where the plausibility of one of the premises is parasitic on the plausibility of the conclusion, and we take begging the question to be an informal fallacy, you would just be admitting that your conceptual argument against the view that I offered, which you didn't have a substantive response towards, you just shrugged it off because there was nothing of further interest in that discussion. You were just admitting then that you were committing an informal fallacy, right, in
no,
your
I just
argumentation.
told you, right? I just told you what my view is.
I understand your view, but the thing is that
So
it's
there's no
also of no
informal
interest to
fallacy
the
there.
naturalist. It's
That's
also of
fine.
no
Why would
interest to
I
the
care about
naturalist.
that? Why would I care about that? Obviously, there's no point in continuing the discussion at that point, right? If they're not going to be moved by the argument, what's the point? That's not committing an informal
Okay, but
fallacy.
no. That's not. Hey, but that you're misrepresenting me. I didn't say that specifically was the informal fallacy. The informal fallacy was you employing such an argument where the plausibility of one of the premises was parasitic on the
What
conclusion.
argument are
That's
you
what I
talking about?
said.
What argument are you talking about? What
I was
argument did I
talking
employ?
about several of your arguments, like the rule following argument, for example.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't, if somebody wants to say, somebody's going to be able to more shift against the rule following argument. And if that happens, right, the argument is not going to go through. Why should I care about that?
Well, in this dialectical context, presumably you're under the impression that if you were to offer such a view that could persuade your opponent, you ought to provide an argument that wouldn't be question begging,
Of
right, against
course,
what they already
of
believe.
course,
Right.
of course. But if I don't
Okay,
have an argument like that, there's no point in continuing.
right, but then you're just admitting that you failed to meet your dialectical norm that you had in the first place. Because in
Obviously, I
argumentation,
wouldn't claim to have an argument that is going to work against every view, because it's always going to be possible to more shift, right?
right,
I just don't
I
see
do
how
agree
that's
with that,
interesting.
but I'm not making that point, right? I'm not making the
Okay, it
simple
doesn't
point
matter
that
whether you're making
I'm
that
not
point or
making
not.
that simple point. I'm making the simple point. I'm not saying that you were fallacious in saying that you shouldn't care, right? I never claimed that. So for you to presume that I did is just a misunderstanding on your part. That's fine. All I said is that you have presumably this cumulative case against naturalism, and I observed, those arguments one by one, and of which all those arguments ran afoul of the same question begging critique that I gave, right? And I said that those
I don't know what
arguments
you
were
mean by what
fallacious.
question begging.
Those
I don't know what.
arguments were fallacious. That's what I said.
Well, I don't remember this, but it doesn't matter, right? Because the point is, I'm not making a claim that I'm not making some kind of claim that is in some way circular or involving some kind of premise that my interlocutor would have no reason to accept if they didn't accept the conclusion of the argument.
Right. So, but you don't think this is the
So I
case
don't
if
see
I were
any
to.
reason.
No,
Yeah.
but you don't think that this is the case if I present to you an argument as such, where let's just say the argument runs like this. If the mental facts are ontologically underdetermined by the physical facts, then mental facts are not identical to the physical facts. Premise two, it's the case that mental facts are ontologically underdetermined by the physical facts. Conclusion, therefore, mental facts are not identical to physical facts. Would you construe such an argument in such a way against the physicalist? Because that seems to be some sort of line that you're running at times when you argue against physicalists and naturalists in general.
Well, you need to argue that there's an underdetermination relation.
Right.
Yeah,
And
so if you argue that there's an underdetermination relation, then I don't see what the problem with that argument is going to be.
Wait, but to even argue that there is an underdetermination relation, whatever set of reasons that you provide for that premise, it's already going to assume that there is not going to be an identity relation to begin with. That's what it means for the plausibility of that premise to be parasitic on the plausibility of the conclusion, which is what my account of question begging is.
Well, no, but the point is, you could give reasons for somebody. What, you're talking about an analytic identity?
Yeah, presumably it could be any. I'm just saying in general, if you're arguing that there is some ontological underdetermination, whatever set of reasons that you could provide for that premise is already going to be parasitic on the plausibility of the conclusion. No matter if the identity relation is analytic or synthetic. Both of these issues apply if you're positing that there is underdetermination.
Well, somebody might think there's a synthetic identity, but not be aware of evidence that can be given to show that there's an underdetermination relation.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about their opaqueness. I'm not talking about the person's opaqueness to evidence. I'm talking about whether or not it's the case.
What do you mean by that?
whether or not they don't have transparent epistemic access to the state of affairs that would constitute evidence, whether or not there's underdetermination, right?
But that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing, was what I'm
Then
getting at.
I
It
don't
has nothing
understand
to
your
do.
objection.
It has nothing to do with whether or not the evidence presented to them or the possible evidence that could be presented to them is opaque or not. Right?
Huh?
It has not. What are you not understanding?
I don't know what you're saying. What do you mean by
We're
evidence
not
being
talking.
opaque?
We're talking about if you presume that there is an ontological gap, right, as one of your premises within the argument, that's already going to presuppose, or whatever set of reasons that you could provide for that argument is going to be parasitic on the conclusion being plausible, which they already reject that there is underdetermination anyway.
Yeah, they might
Ontological
reject
underdetermination.
that there's underdetermination, right? That doesn't mean you can't give additional arguments
No, I
for
didn't
it.
say. So now you're misconstruing it again. I didn't say anything as to whether or not they couldn't give additional arguments. I'm just saying that the plausibility is parasitic on the conclusion,
I don't get it.
and they don't have any. Well, what don't you get? I think you know exactly what I mean when I say that it's parasitic on the conclusion.
Why is it that you can't give an argument that there's underdetermination? Like, what's ruling that out?
I said that if they don't have if they don't have a plausible reason presented to them that could convince them otherwise that there isn't an identity relation, they could just plausibly deny that there's ontological underdetermination, that there's an ontological gap. They could deny that premise plausibly.
So what?
And the set of reasons that you've given seem to only be able to rely on the apparent parasitism on the conclusion.
I'm not following that. I don't see why it's not possible to give them an argument to show. I don't see why it's not possible to adduce reasons for them to revise their view
Yeah,
that there's
but I'm
an
just saying that
underdetermination
those reasons would have to be necessarily constrained to this assumption that there is an ontological underdetermination, which they can plausibly reject.
Well, who cares whether they can plausibly reject it? That doesn't mean that I'm not in a position to be able to offer reasons.
They can plausibly reject it because the set of reasons that you provided is just going to assume the conclusion.
I don't see how you've established that.
I just did.
Look, do you think that it's possible to give reasons as to why there should be an underdetermination relation between physical facts and mental facts?
Within this argument, I don't think
I didn't ask you that.
Wait, but I'm responding. I'm saying that in this argument, right? Why it was
I don't know what
still
argument you're
could be
talking about. I
possible.
just asked
The
you.
argument I just presented to
I'm
you.
not talking. I'm just asking you, right? Is it possible to give an argument to show that there's an underdetermination relation between mental facts and physical facts?
You're asking whether or not it would be possible for you to employ that argument?
Is it possible to give such an argument?
It's possible to give the argument, but it's not plausible. It's not plausible to give that argument in a way that wouldn't be question begging under my account of question begging.
I don't know. Why would it? So
as I just explained,
somebody thinks that there's an identity relation between physical facts and mental facts, right?
Which is also to presume that there wouldn't be an ontological gap, by the way, between those two facts.
Yeah,
right?
That commits them to thinking there isn't an underdetermination relation, right?
Right.
Yeah. So if I give an argument that there's an underdetermination relation, right, that's a reason for them to change their view. If it's a good argument.
It would be a reason. But if you were to provide if you were to provide another way of restating that premise in order to exemplify your reason, you would be just restating your conclusion, which is that there isn't an identity relation between those states. So if you say
you mean because you want to say that that arguing that there's an underdetermination relation is just to argue
there's no identity
relation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't see what the problem is there. Right? The point is you're trying to move the person from thinking there's an identity relation to thinking there isn't an identity
Well, you might not construe that as a problem, but if you thinking that a sort of restructuring of a certain the restructuring of a certain premise which is already exemplifying the conclusion in such a way that you could restate it, is going to be convincing. Well, I don't see how this wouldn't run afoul as to what I'm saying when I'm saying you're begging the question.
But the disagreement is simply that somebody thinks there's an identity relation, and somebody thinks that there's not, right?
Right, but you're saying that that wouldn't be a problem because it's already attempted to be given in dispute if you could resolve the issue by showing that there wouldn't be an identity relation, appealing to some external reason, right? Is that where you're trying to get
I don't
at?
know what you mean by an external reason.
By
But yeah,
some
you can get
by some justification that wouldn't have to be parasitic on the conclusion. Right. That's what I mean. But as to right now, by you just saying that premise one, if there is an underdetermination problem, then there is no identity relation. There is an underdetermination problem. Therefore, there is no identity relation. Any set of reasons that you could offer for the second premise is just going to be parasitic on the conclusion. That's what I'm trying to get at. And I think I already explained that. So while it is going to be a form of fallacious reasoning under the account of question begging that I gave, you could say, well, it's not a problem because all I need to do there is to provide evidence that there is an underdetermination gap, and that would be sufficient to establish the conclusion. Okay, you might construe that as a problem given your account, right, of how arguments work, but it's certainly not going to follow from my account. You're still engaging in a fallacious reasoning there.
But I mean, the only
And I
point
think I
is,
can reasonably say that.
but the point is, if you give an argument that there's no identity relation, right? What you're doing if you give an argument that there's an underdetermination relation, right? That's it. That's what you're trying to convince the person of. You can have arguments like that.
Yes, right. You can have arguments like that, but my point is that if you were to engage in such a dispute like that, right, it's not going. So all of this is, I think, going to be relative to the dialectical context that you're in. If you're in a dialectical context with a person which doesn't share the goal, right, to have this method of argumentation where you think that for any premise that's provided, any set of reasons that you would give for that view just assumes that the conclusion is the case. I'm just saying you're not going to be successful against a reasonable type A physicalist because they could always pull the move that I'm talking about, right? So I'm just saying that while you're free to say that you don't care, I'm not attacking you for that. I didn't say that was the fallacious part. I interpreted it as being fallacious because you were falling victim to a question begging argument. That's what I said was fallacious.
That just seems to be some kind of misunderstanding. That's not very interesting.
Well, seems to be or is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember making an argument like that. That if I did, there was just some confusion.
But it just seems that you're misunderstanding my account of question begging then, or what
Why?
happened.
Well, I don't even remember that discussion.
Well, it's fine. But I'm just saying that a lot of the people here were misconstruing what I was saying because they're dishonest fucks. I wasn't saying that you were being fallacious or being sophistic by saying that you didn't care, right, if you engaged in question begging. I said that the argumentation, right, that you provided within that dialectical context was going to be such where it was going to be fallacious. I made that point clear 12,000 times. But when you have dishonest,
it's not
when you have dishonest idiots like Tom Rabbit in these stages, that's what happens. You get misinformation.
I don't care about any of that.
Well, it's fine.
Wait, what did I do?
It's fine that you don't care, but I'm just saying that they were misconstruing what I was saying.
How did I misconstrue anything? I just repeated your words.
Incorrectly. Look,
what do you mean?
Do you even understand what I was saying when I laid out the reasons?
When exactly? What do you mean when you said that he was a sophist?
Earlier. See, this is why.
Well, I understand what you meant when you said he is a sophist.
This is why you can't track. This is why you can't track.
You do not say that he was a sophist?
I said that he was in that context, there was a form of fallacious reasoning that was being engaged in.
You said he was a sophist. He engages in.
Yeah, that's what sophistry is.
Yeah, and that the claim that you made earlier to Jack, which you said in the prior discussion, was that he knew that he engaged in sophistry and he didn't care.
Yeah, knowingly engaging.
He didn't. Jack was interpreting that as saying that it was fallacious for him to say, "I don't care." That's not.